Hello, this is Anna Imagination with Shifting Perspectives from the Healing Garden. Today, we are going to focus a lot on a very interesting topic. This is one that has come back to me time and time again. And basically, how I come up with topics for shifting perspectives is I evaluate my own life. And I'm a theoretical learner. So when there is something that I struggle with in my personal life, that's where I get pensive. I take a philosophical point of view. I step back and I say, okay, where can I get access to X and what can I learn from this? So yesterday, first of all, I've been struggling with fun most of my life. It's a result of trauma. People who suffer from substantial trauma really struggle with fun. It is an unfortunate consequence to survival. You're so busy surviving and being abused that fun is a luxury you don't get to explore. Your only focus in those early stages of trauma and the recovery after is just trying to get through it. Fun is a luxury that people who don't live in trauma get to indulge in. So, we're going to take a step back today and really delve into the world of fun because as you come out of trauma, as you settle into a life that is void of victimization and survival, as you start to thrive, one of the major consequences of this is you get to start having fun. But for somebody who is raised in trauma and abuse, that is not an easy task. Now, the other flip side of this coin is when we settle into the rat race and society grips its claws into us, we run into another problem where we lose fun. And it's very difficult for a lot of adults to tap into what fun is and how to have it. And we might put together some vacations, some family holidays, some travel, but then we promptly spend that time working. Now, I am a workaholic. It is absolutely a massive trait of me. It is Saturday at 10:55 and I'm working. It's working is my enjoyment, it's my control, it's my fun, it's my remedy. It's work is my solution to everything, which actually is funny because I'm a hippie and my father conditioned me to believe that hippies don't work. But I'm like the living proof that that's a bullshit societal gaslight because I'm a boho hippie and I very much. My problem is I work too much. And even and what I do is I actually find ways to turn fun and enjoyment into work. For instance, and this is really what I want to talk about, is when I went on my walkabout for a year, one of my actual goals for doing it, I'm actually getting ahead of myself, but I'll keep on this train of thought. And this morning, when I was downstairs doing my meditation and focusing on my day, I was analyzing how can I have fun? And I thought back to times before when I was having fun. And I was really trying to recall when was the last time you had fun on your own? And I remembered it was when I was on walkabout and I analyzed what was so fun about my walkabout. And I remembered that for me, it was the exploration of meeting new people. And I was actually doing psychological, social experiments on people. So that I went into a dating app and I would put myself out there, purposely tapping into mystery, saying, here are my rules. This is not going to be sexual. There's not going to be any kissing. This is not a date. We're not going to see each other more than just one time. You have to catch my interest. You have to be interesting because I'm exceptional and I am interesting. So you have to match me. The goal, you show me the city. The bill will be split evenly 50%. 3 rules. You are not allowed to ask me about my childhood. You are not allowed to ask me where I came from. The reason why I'm doing this is because I want to learn about society, social experiments, and psychology. And you are part of my social experiment. I cannot tell you how popular I was. I was this fun, mysterious, beautiful mermaid pirate nymph that just boop showed up. We went and had fun, went on an adventure. It was New York City, and boom, I was gone again. And I did that over and over and over and over. I have a lot of stories. And then I met somebody. This is interesting. I met somebody. And we did that, our own variation of that, for about 2 months. And then it stopped. And I was thinking this morning, why did it stop? It stopped because the fear of losing him became associated with the unknown and the adventure. And suddenly it was, if we go forward on fun and adventure, I could lose him. So this fear of losing him grew very, very quickly. And to make sure I hold on to him, this is attachment, I hold myself away with him. We hold ourselves away. We put ourselves into this little box and we closed off the adventures. And every time we sought out a new adventure, the fear would absolutely amass until the relationship deteriorated and fell apart. That's when I recoiled, put myself in my cave, and I did all of my psych work. That's when I picked up the healing garden and crammed it into my brain. And now I'm at this point where I'm going, okay, I want fun again, because I'm a workaholic and I'm constantly cramming all this information into my brain, and I'm working with you guys and I'm going, I want fun again. How do I do this? So yesterday, my daughter and I went to the beach. I did not have fun. I did not have fun. And that bothered me. I'm on Coney Island. Why is this not fun? And I analyzed it. I spent the entire time on the beach working, because that's what I do. Literally, I sat on the beach and I watched her play in the water, and I went into the water, but I was not having fun. There were some men sitting on the jetties. The jetties are the rocks that go out to sea. My favorite thing to do at the beach is to climb onto the jetties. Pause. I have been rock climbing free form on 20 feet walled shale gorges in the forest on my own without any climbing equipment since I was 8 years old. So climbing on rocks for me is like one of my favorite pastimes. And like I'm not talking harness, I'm talking free form. Like I was climbing waterfalls, and I would climb up and scale at 8 years old these massive shale walls into the gorge. Google Watkins Glen. That's where I was. I literally had my own private Watkins Glen in my backyard. And it's funny because people look at it, and even as a mother now, I look at it going, yeah, I was 8 years old scaling 20-foot shale rock cliffs without any, I was good at it. And I had one scare. I really had one scare where I could feel the shale rock giving out from underneath me, and I had easily a 15-foot drop. I would have died. And I was paralyzed, like, so yeah, adventure, risk taker, trauma. So I grew up like that. So climbing on a jetty is like level 2. It's a joke. So I was at the beach and I went to climb onto the jetties. So one of my favorite things to do is to climb onto the jetties and do yoga or Tai Chi or even just meditation. I will like get into tree pose Oh my God, I love doing it. I love doing it so much, where I'll just stand out on the jetties and just take in the sea and meditate. So there were these men on the jetties, and I got over to the ocean. I started to climb on the jetty, and the lifeguard whistled at me. Like, he used his whistle, and I looked over and he's like, "Get off." And I'm like, the men are allowed on. Why am I not allowed on? So I'm not going to dig into that misogynistic bullshit from our society, but it immediately set me in a really bad mood. And I went, okay, like, the only thing that I was really looking forward to at this beach was doing my meditations on the jetties. And I couldn't because I was a girl. So I sat down on the beach instead and I just meditated. And I went to work and I thought, what is fun? Why am I at the beach and not having fun? How do I have fun? When was the last time I had fun? And the last time I had fun was with my partner. We were in the car and we were going on adventures. And he was singing to me his salsa music in his silly monkey way. But we had no idea what was going on ahead. We had no idea what we were going into. We had no idea. So I got home, and this morning I was still pondering what was different before this relationship and in the early stages of that relationship versus now. And I went back to, well, you were having fun. Well, what is fun? So I Googled it, and they mentioned, according to Google, freedom and adventure, or the unknown. And that was enough that my brain fueled, and I was able to put the rest of the thought together, and I went, there it is. So now let's get to work. The unknown. Everything is on a spectrum. And in that gorgeous little center gray area of the balance, there is the unknown with the familiar. What is familiar? What is known? And that's your comfort and that's your safety. And then there is the unknown. What lies ahead? That's the adventure. And when you're not traumatized, like a pirate in the open sea on his ship or her ship, it's the adventure. Where are you going to go? What are you going to find? Who are you going to meet? It's the unpredictable. You're literally playing with possibility, and you're playing with risk, and you're playing with unknowns. And as I build the healing garden, I have this future ahead of me. Listen to this. I have this future ahead of me, and I can imagine where it's going to take me, but I don't know where it's going to take me. And that makes me excited. That makes me really, really excited. And I'm going, who am I going to meet? Where are we going to go? How big am I going to take this garden? What am I going to do along the way? When am I going to get there? I don't know. And that's exciting. That's so exciting to me. And my imagination and all my dreams and all my thoughts and all these possibilities fuel my excitement. So every day I go to work and I go, who am I going to meet today? Who's going to join my crew? And I start getting things together. And I can feel the pirate in me come back out again. And this is my ship. And I'm going into all these different ports. And that was the excitement of finding land and getting into port. And that adventure of who am I going to meet along the way? And it was funny because when I was doing my healing, I envisioned me on a ship. And I envisioned this storm. And I couldn't find the calm waters, and it was exhausting. And I had to learn how to sail this ship, my life, through the storm, the trauma. And I couldn't even stand in the rain to take the helm, my subconscious mind. So in most days, I just curled up in the corner of my ship while the rain beat down on me, and I put my knees into my face. And I just waited out the storm. And I lived like this for a very long time. And I remember the day that the storm broke. And I took the helm. And I was calm. And that was the day that I went into New York City and I started my walkabout. And suddenly I was just sailing through the city and I was laid back. And that's when I was magnetic and just bringing people to me. I was this princess, Captain Princess on this ship. And I was a mermaid and and these men would take me out on dates and they'd want to know so much about me. And I'd cut them off and say, nope, I am from everywhere and nowhere. And that is my answer to this day. I am from everywhere and nowhere because I didn't want to ruin the adventure and the excitement and the fun by talking about my past. I didn't want to be a downer. And there were some dates where I allowed the men to ask me questions and we dug into it. I allowed questions, and sometimes a guy would get close enough to me where I would say, you want to know where I come from? I come from hell. And I would start telling him about my life. And I watched the date deteriorate. And they would just go, oh. And then they would just sit there and apologize over and over again. And then I was depressed because I was thinking about my trauma. So it became a rule. We're not going to talk about my past. You're not going to ask me about my family. You're not going to ask me about my childhood. You're not going to ask me where I came from. Because as soon as you ask those questions, as soon as you start to dig into who I am, the whole thing falls apart. It's not fun anymore. But I came into another problem. No one knew who I was. They didn't even know my real name. A lot of people didn't know my real name. A lot of people still don't know my real name. That got me into the discussion of vulnerability and connection. That's for another podcast. That's when I dug deep into human connection and why we feel so alone and how to stop feeling so alone. So yeah, we'll talk about that at a different podcast. But for now, it was just fun. And I learned that there is a delicate balance between having fun and being familiar and unknown and having that human connection. And the more this partner of mine, this person, the more he knew about me and the more connected we became, the less fun we had because we lost the balance until our entire relationship became defined by my trauma and his trauma. And we stopped having fun because the fear expanded. He was afraid of being abandoned. I was afraid of losing him. I was afraid of him falling out of love with me. He was afraid of So when you have this spectrum, you have this side of fun and excitement and adventure and world travel. And over here you have just nothing. You have familiarity and comfort zone and being a shut-in, which is where I lived for 20 years. I was so afraid of the unknown that I was a shut-in. So I went from being a shut-in to going on walkabout, metaphorically going on sea adventures like a pirate through Manhattan. And then I found love and I became so preserved that I became a shut-in again. And then I healed. And now I'm moving back into here and I'm going, now where's this balance? Because if you have too much over here, there's no familiarity and there's no human connection. And if you're over here, you might have human connection, maybe, but you definitely will not have fun. And the goal is to have that gorgeous little safe spot right there where you have balanced between connection and familiarity, your home, and your adventures. Now, I have always had a problem with home. According to my zodiac sign, it's because of the way the planets are aligned, and I will always struggle with home. So for me, home is a tent or a ship. About a year ago, my brain turned on and I went, I want to get a ship. I want a boat, and I want to park it in the harbor of Manhattan. You can do this. And I want to live on my ship. Now, it's expensive, but hear me out. In comparison to the rent in Manhattan, it's cheap as fuck. So while people are going, oh, it's so expensive, I'm going, or is it? Because in comparison, $1 million house just to live free of cockroaches, or a boat, which is like, well, it depends on the square footage of the boat, and you have docking fees and all that jazz. And there's a lot of, basically they nickel and dime you to death. And I have been doing a lot of interviewing people, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm still obsessed with wanting my boat. But it's the freedom. It's the freedom. I want a boat, and I want to be a real captain, and I want to be Captain Princess. And my boat will be called the HMS. I don't know. Maybe it's the Imagination. That would be awesome. Having a boat named the Imagination. Pirates are very much my tap into fun. Very much. It's something about the sea for me, and ships that just embrace discovery and exploration, that plays with the unknown. And when you look into movies and video games allow you to mentally escape into the adventure so that you could have fun. I remember the first time I watched Harry Potter, Marvel books, Lord of the Rings was fun, but really One Piece. And I keep coming back to One Piece. I'm going to be talking a lot about One Piece for the rest of my life, because that show captures my spirit so much. And One Piece anime runs about 20 episodes, usually 12 to 20 episodes. If you can find an anime that's 30 episodes long, that's long. Some animes are 6 episodes, some are 12. 12 is usually solid. They're like little mini, that's it. You have a few flukes. Death Note is long, Trigun is long, and Fullmetal Alchemist is long. Now, the mother lode of all anime is One Piece. At halfway through, you're at 1,000 episodes. It's been on air since 1999, and we're only halfway done. So there are people who grew up with One Piece. Now, when I got into anime, the first anime I found was One Piece. Okay, that's a lie. I snuck down when I was 15 years old every morning to watch Dragon Ball Z with my brother. Tell no one. That being said, my second favorite, Dragon Ball Z is not my favorite anime. It's the one I had access to when I was 15. So One Piece, when I got into that world, was the first anime I really fell in love with. It was the first anime that went, who is this boy? He is my soul. First of all, he's a Taurus, just like me. Really, just like me. We're both foodies. We're both like adventure. And we both collect people. And we both love ships. And we both want crews. And neither one of us want to be married. And we just want to be like, let's go on an adventure. And we're both magnetic, and we just draw people in. Everything. It's like Ichiro Oda, the author, reached into my soul and pulled out Luffy and went boom. And here's the best part: I'm a monkey. I was born in 1980, so I'm a monkey, Chinese zodiac, and he's Monkey D. Luffy, and we're both determined. And he's walking around going, "I'm gonna be the pirate king," and I'm going, "Great, I'm gonna be the pirate queen." He is my soul. It's like somebody literally wrote an anime all about me. So it's really personal. And the first time I started watching One Piece, I got 100 episodes in, and it's just getting started. And I was like, I remember he's going into Reverse Mountain, which is the pirate graveyard. And basically the world is a completely different world where most of it is just ocean and the whole thing is islands. And I'm like, yes. And I'm just like, there's a reason why I live in Manhattan. Because islands, and every island is an adventure. And he takes his ship, and he starts off with a barrel, and he upgrades to a little boat, literally a boat, a dinghy, and then he goes from there to a ship, and then he gets a galleon. Well, he gets a carnival ship, and he gets to this one island. It's the last stop before you get to Reverse Mountain. And Reverse Mountain is basically the mountain that has a river flowing up it. And it's the only way to get into the other ocean. And the other ocean is the pirate's graveyard, where the great treasure One Piece is. And he's just on the adventure for the adventure. And as he goes, he finds people and he says, "You are part of my crew. You are my nakama. You are part of my crew." Nakama is a Japanese word that has no English translation. I remember this one very early when I started watching anime 15 years ago. This fan gave an explanation of nakama. It means chosen heart, chosen family, my heart family. Romantic, not romantic. These are the people you will die for. These are the people who are in These are the people who are in your care to protect, no matter what. No matter what. They're in our nakama. Luffy is loyal, and so am I. But we get to that 100th episode, and there's a storm at sea, and they're going up Reverse Mountain. And I was like excited, and I'm like, yes, yes, and I'm cheering him on. And I was carried away on that adventure, and it was fun. Because I disassociated, as we all do when we watch TV. And I went into the story, and I was there riding the seas with that boy. And every time I got into my car and drove anywhere, it was an adventure. And every time I started a new project, it was an adventure. What am I going to do? What am I going to find along the way? Who am I going to meet? And I encapsulated that sense of adventure. And I carried it with me. And that is my sunlight. And that is a mindset. And when you have that mindset, that everything in life is an adventure, that wherever you go is a possibility, an opportunity for new things, the fear goes away. Everything melts away. It's the fantasy, the imagination. Imagination. It always comes back to imagination. It's getting out of your fear, telling your fear system to sit down and shut up because I got my defenses. I'm strong. I can fight my way through anything. I can handle whatever comes my way. We're going on an adventure. To this day, every time I walk the streets of Manhattan, it feels like an adventure. To this day, every time I go anywhere, every time I get on the subway, it's an adventure, especially if you smoke weed first. Oh my God, it's so much fun. And it's an adventure. It's something new. And you never know who you're going to meet. And it's one of the things I love about New York City is every time you get on a subway, you're going to never see the same face twice, except one time. And I remember I stared at that guy and I'm like, wow. And I had to apologize. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm staring at you because I've seen you before. You never see any face more than once. You just don't. You have to go into a store, into a bodega to see the same face twice. Anywhere else, not going to happen. Not going to fucking happen. You can take the train 80 million times. What are the odds? Even if you get on the N train, you have to make sure you get on the same car with the same person. It doesn't happen, which is why I love New York City. And everyone is so weird because here you can be weird. I mean, you can be weird and no one cares. So it's like a celebration of identity. And then June rolls around. I live down by Coney Island, so it's the Mermaid Parade. Oh yeah, with Pride Month. So it's like our weird is going to come out in June and we're going to celebrate it. Last year, I dyed my hair rainbow for the Mermaid Parade. And then, yeah, it kind of washed out and it did this weird blonde rainbow happy thing. And about 3 days later, I went, oh, it's Pride Month. And I was so happy that it was Pride Month because I was totally rocking both the Mermaid Parade and Pride Month at the same time. I was very happy. And it was just the adventure. And there was this one day I just sat down and my hair was blowing and it was really long at that time. It was blonde and it was rainbows. And I had so many beautiful people go, oh my God, I love the rainbow hair. And I said, thanks, Pride Month. Oh yeah, that's me. I've been Captain Princess for 5 years. And when I launched my first company, Brain to Books, and I accumulated my crew, I brought everybody together. So many people together. And they followed me. Just like Luffy. I said, I'm going to follow me. I'm going to promise you adventure. I'm going to take you on a ride. And I'll take care of you. You'll be my nakama. But we're going on an adventure. My favorite line ever that's ever been written in any book is Bilbo Baggins when he grabs the treasure map or the contract and he's running out of the Shire and he says, Bilbo, where are you going? And he says, I'm going on an adventure. It's my favorite line in all of the books. We're going on an adventure. And fear kills that. Fear kills it. And fear killed it for me. When I was a child, the only thing that kept me sane, the only thing that got me through it was my adventure. I had to lock myself in my bedroom for years. I had a window and I would take my dresser and push it in front of the door because my brother would unlock the door and come in and beat me. And the only way I could prevent him from coming in was by pushing my dresser in front of the door and listening to him bang on the door saying, I'm going to fucking kill you. And I would open up my window. And at night when everyone was asleep, that's when I was safe. It was the only time I could walk outside and be safe. During the day, I had to be locked in a room while my mother kept watch so that my brother could threaten me. And I would get outside into the trees and I would find the moonlight in the rain and I would dance. And I would pretend that I was a fairy dancing in the moonlight. And I would pretend that the moonbeams would carry me into the ethereal realm. And that is where I grew up, dancing on moonlight and dreams. And every time I was outside, my brother would beat me. He would torture the animals. He would do things to the animals. And I would grab the animals and I would run, and I would imagine me running to this magic room, to this magic castle. And I would get in my room and I would close the door and I would push my dresser in front of my door. And I would hear him baiting and telling me he was going to fucking kill me. And I slipped away into the world of my mind and into my fantasies. And I imagined I was in a marble bedroom with a water fountain that just poured out of the ceiling. It was like a genie's bottle that I could vanish into. And there was a balcony with gossamer curtains. And there were cats in that room. My castle on a cloud. My castle on a cloud. And no one could hurt me while I was in that room. But I was a prisoner at the end of the day. And if I stepped out of that room, I would die. When the car accident happened in 1990, there was a devastating car accident, a DWI, that killed my uncle and 3 of my cousins. 1 week after my aunt gave birth to her son. She had to bury her husband and 3 of her children a week after giving birth. My aunt is a strong woman. My mom looked at me during that accident when we had my best friend at the time to recover, my cousin. And my mom said to me, "Because you're her best friend, we think you can save her." I was 10 years old. "So we're going to make sure you're with her a lot so you can save her." And I was taken to Pennsylvania for 2 years every day and put at the almost deathbed of my best friend while I talked to her. And she couldn't even speak. She was the only survivor in the car accident. And that burden was absolutely put on me. And the only escape I had was my imagination. The only escape I had was pretending I was a mermaid. Every day, I could go out to these beautiful garden rocks. They were beautiful rocks. They were like Ariel, the Little Mermaid rocks. Dead serious. They were like whoosh. I mean, they looked like they were pulled right out of the movie and just right down there. And I would go out and lay on those rocks for hours, pretending I was a mermaid and I was anywhere else but there. And my fantasies and my imagination got me through it. And if I wasn't being threatened by my brother and watching him mutilate animals, I was at the deathbed of my cousin with such severe brain damage that she, at 8 years old, had the mentality of an infant. And for 2 years, I was subjected to that. And it was the fun and the fantasy and the escape. It was the freedom of imagination that allowed me to get away from that. And in 2015, when I was at my absolute worst mentally, where I was just locked in another room for 20 years, terrified of adventure, terrified of the unknown, terrified because the fear of unknown had gone so drastically over here that I could no longer embrace adventure. I launched my books and stumbled upon the slush brain, a bunch of authors. Around that time, I wrote a book called Zombies from Space and Vampires. Oh yeah, I did that. And in it, aliens, oh yeah, aliens invade Earth. And these aliens are not used to our gravity. So our gravitational pull shreds the skin off of these aliens, and they look and move like zombies, and they eat humans. So zombies in my book are just aliens. And the vampires in our culture who are hidden realize that they now have competition for the food chain. And if the vampires don't start fighting the zombies, I wrote this shit. Oh yeah. If the vampires don't come out of hiding and start fighting the zombies, aliens, they're going to have a food shortage. So they start fighting. So there's like a vampire zombie war. Now my characters, me, are the HMS Slushspring pirates. Oh yeah, pirates. There's pirates in this book too. And we are the people who represent the human race going, oh no, we're not going to be anyone's food chain. We're not going to appease the vampires, and we're not going to appease the zombie aliens. We're going to fight for our rights as pirates. So I make an appearance as Captain Princess, and I lead the HMS Slushspring crew into a zombie war with vampires. And through that stupid little book, you can get it on Amazon, I found my freedom again. I found fun again. My favorite thing in the world in Star Trek is the holodeck. A room where you walk in and you can say anything you want to it and anything will appear. Isn't that what we do with our own imagination? Close your mind. Imagine yourself anywhere in the world. I had a group on Goodreads at the time called the Epic Group, and it was a fantasy-based group. Within a couple weeks, I had over 600 people in that group. We were all authors, because it was Goodreads, and we were all fantasy authors, so we had imagination. And there was this one day, I had like 4 people in the room with me, Mind you, this is all writing. And I said, oh yeah? Anna pulls out a paint gun and shoots somebody in the face and says, you're it. Oh yeah? And they come out and they flip their gun around and grrr. It launched a 2-day paint war, which is actually still on my website that you can read, angelabchrysler.com. And what ensued was a bunch of fantasy authors going, holodeck, set the scene 1920s mafia in New York City. Boom. And we're all in our zoot suits and we all have our paint guns and we tear ass in this little flapper town. Oh yeah. And we got to this one point where we went, no, not good enough. Take me to the ruins of Montezuma. Boom, we're in South America. And someone comes in with this 1910 Zeppelin and drops this massive paintball down on us. Oh, yeah. Imagination. The darkness itself blushes. Freedom exists inside your imagination. It really does. Freedom is like the core of imagination. It's the gateway to fun and freedom and exploration and adventure. And when you sit here and you stop dreaming about something better in your life, You have accepted a kind of death. And when you find a way to start imagining again and having fun again, you find a way to open the doors to hope and change. And when you start running towards that change because you seek the adventure of that change, you stop fearing. And when you stop fearing change, anything is possible. But your fear system is so out of balance and it consumes all of you that you're in a prison, your own mental prison. I remember this one day, my therapist asked me, "Were you actually locked in a room?" It was the time that I was a sex slave for 6 months. I was a sex slave for 6 months. And she said to me, "Were you really locked in a room?" And I said to her, "I didn't have to be. Fear did that for me. The terrorism he used on me, no locks required." I'm going to say that again. The fear and the terror he used on me, I didn't even need a lock on my door. I didn't even try to leave the room. I was that terrified. All he had to do was look at me and say, "I'll do whatever I want to you, or I'll give you back to your brother who will kill you." Okay. And I had to choose between fear and rape. My brother killing me or rape. Do I want to live or do I want to die? So no, he did not have to lock the door. The chains I wore, well, during that time, he literally had chains on me. But yeah, fear. It took me decades to learn that fear is your own personal little prison hell. And that you have the control, you do, to turn that fear off so you can get out of your own goddamn prison. And I realized that psychological entrapment, it's a real thing, is actually when a third-party abuser or a narcissist uses fear to enslave you so that when they're gone, the fear stays like its own little hellish prison inside of your head. Because it's your defense system turned off and your fear system's turned on. And the fear of the unknown, the thing that gives you fun and freedom, is the very thing you become terrified of. That is why so many of us don't change. That's why so many of us talk about wanting to heal, but we don't. Because we are fucking terrified of the unknown. Because your fear centers have been turned on so high that you are terrified of fun. That is why trauma survivors don't have fun. Because they have been literally conditioned to be afraid of it. So this morning, I found my fun again. I lost it. Summer of 2021. It is summer of 2023. And I have found my fun again. And I went, well, God damn it, where are my pirates? Literally, that's me. This is me. That's what I do. Where the fuck are my pirates? So I'm back as Captain Princess because that is who I am. And that is how I siphon my fun since I was 10 years old, sitting on a couple of rocks outside of a hospital pretending to be a mermaid. And it's just one more piece to this massive healing garden. And I changed the motto today. I realized the motto to the garden, and it's been something I've been playing around with. And I started off with this very mental health, healing wellness center. And I'm like, oh God, it's so yoga and Tai Chi and wellness. And it felt like I was just copying every other wellness center out there. And the healing garden is not just any other wellness center. Fuck that shit. No, it's not. Let me show you a different way to live. Let me show you a different way to live. Oh, yeah. Because when I was on Walkabout, I had so many people going, who are you? Who am I? Let me show you who I am. My trauma gave me the most beautiful gift of all, the gift of imagination. And I learned how to heal with it. I learned how to get out with it. I learned how to dream with it. I learned how to get on my imaginary ship and sail so fucking far away from that trauma and create a life completely out of the ordinary. You don't have to do what everyone says. You don't have to do what your parents tell you to do anymore. You can say, fuck this shit. Fuck this shit. I am getting on my ship and I'm sailing into the sunset and I'm going to pursue my adventures. Be Bilbo. Jump onto your little ship and go, I'm going on to an adventure. Have fun. Explore. Use your defense system. Keep yourself safe. You can do it. I'll show you how. Let me show you a different way to live. Because there's a world of adventure out there. And all it requires is a different mindset. And if I had the power to manifest the world, I would introduce myself as Captain Princess. Because I am Captain Princess. And I can weave such dreams of fantasy in which to sail your ship upon moonbeams and dreams. I have these moments where I just sit back into my mind and I think and I review. And I think of all the things I say to you. And when I started, I was so worried about being taken seriously. And I've said it before that on this road of identity, I feel like, in 2015, I knew who I was. I had just spent like 15 years writing books. You know who you are when you write a book. And I wrote down all of my dreams and all of my fantasies and all of my worlds. In fact, every time you pick up my book, I have the line, step into my world with me. I will show you what I see. Step into my world with me. I will show you what I see. And every book you pick up of mine is my world. The Healing Garden is just one more of my worlds. Dollar and Shadow is another one of my worlds. Zombies from space and vampires is another one of my worlds. The Healing Garden is just another one of my worlds. And every time I step into the Healing Garden, I'm back in Alexandria. I'm at the Lighthouse of Pharos. Every time I send out my newsletter, I feel like a philosopher sitting at a fountain, talking to you about my philosophies. Every time I walk into Shifting Perspectives, I imagine myself back in ancient Greece, ancient Alexandria, standing next to Plato going, and after this class, you can go speak to Plato, who's talking today about Socrates and his Socratic method. Enjoy. And then I sit down at the Philosopher's Fountain and I send out my newsletter. And then I step into Psych 5 and I challenge myself to see if I can regurgitate 1 hour worth of theory in 5 minutes. And then when I sit down and I teach you triadic healing in my courses, I pull you into the subconscious mind. I use imagination to bring the world of abstract thought to life. And I show you, these are all the players. These are all the people we have in our minds. We have our subconscious mind, Rick, and we have our fear system. I call him Jerry. And we have our guilt system. Guilt is a good friend of Jerry, and he's the neighbor kid who eats our stuff in our fridge, and he shouldn't be here. He needs to go home. Send your guilt neighbor kid home. He shouldn't be here. He's not part of the system. And in the center of this is our beautiful goddess, our queen, the identity. A majestic, beautiful goddess who contains all of your power. She's a goddess or a god sitting inside of you with the ability and the power to create through imagination or destroy through revenge. Don't let them destroy. Let them create, using imagination to create whatever you want, and now you've opened the doors to manifestation. You can literally manifest yourself from trauma into healing. And so many times I would scold myself, oh, Anna, you're being delusional. Am I? Am I being delusional? I found my happiness. I recovered myself from 40 years of trauma, slavery, and abuse. And I'm happy. And I got my sunlight back. And every day I sail my imaginative ship through the healing garden, and I come into port at the Alexandria Library in my lighthouse. And I send out my beacon to others and I say, look what I've created. Let me show you a different way of living. Stop sinking into the stories of other people and start living your own story. Oh, the psychology of story. Now that is something we need to talk about. The psychology of story. As an author, I have explored this concept many times, but I have never actually applied it to healing. And it's time that maybe I do. I have many names, and every name that I have is my identity. Every name that I have tells the story of who I am, who I once was, who I had to become to get where I am. It is a badge of honor. You have your name too. You have many names. And your healing journey is going to help you come across all of your different names. And that's really what you're doing, is you are venturing into the field of the unknown. You are on an adventure to find your name, to find out who you are. Just because it's trauma recovery and healing doesn't mean it has to be negative, horrible trauma dumping and emotional flooding. It can be an adventure too. Let me show you a different way to live. Because there is a different way to live. This has been Shifting Perspectives. My name is Anna Imagination. Please subscribe to this podcast and also subscribe to my newsletter. The link is available down below. Thank you so much for your time. This has been The Healing Garden, and may the kindest of words always find you.